Hey, what's good? My name is SATURDAE, and this is part 6 of my EDM Production Series. So today we're going to be mixing our kick and using EQ and compression clipping to make it sound really nice. So the first thing I do once I get an outline for a track is I immediately mix the kick and the bass, and I always start with the kick. It becomes a lot easier to design your bass sounds around a kick once it's final. So that's why I start there, and then the bass kind of shapes the rest of the tone of the entire track. How we're going to do this is I'm going to do Option Command N. I am going to go to my software instruments, and I am going to use this plugin called Kick 2. This is a paid plugin. I have it linked in the description. This is like one of my favorite plugins. Everything I'm about to do, you do not need to have this plugin for it. It's just a lot faster. You can still do this by using a couple of audio channels. You can use the samplers in Logic and just stack them. So I'm going to copy this section up. Actually, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to control click in here, create a pattern region, and it's going to sound terrible. Sorry about that. I'm just going to make a loop here. I'm also going to mute this track. This track was our original kick. This is what the interface looks like. I'm not going to go into detail with Kick 2 because a lot of you might not have it, but I'm going to mute this sub here. Now, what I'm keeping in mind is the bass that I already have in the song already in the back of my head so that I can design a kick that will fit well with the track. So I have this bass right now. So it's like a very deep re-space. If I had to guess, that's operating a lot of sub-frequencies and then a lot of highs. And I know in this drop, there's going to be a lot of sub-frequencies as well. Generally for EDM, there's a lot of sub-frequencies happening with your bass tracks, and I generally like using shorter, punchier kicks for that reason, because it helps them get out of those sub-frequencies and operate a little bit in their own space. So I'm going to look for a kind of punchier kick that doesn't have a lot of sub-frequencies, and I will be right back. Okay, so I found a kick that I like. So I just dragged and dropped it into here, and it loaded for me. So now we have something that sounds like this. And here's what it sounds like in context. So I already think that fits like really well, but I want to layer this kick with another kick to give it a little bit more texture. So I'm going to add in, I found this other kick, this one. I like that it's just kind of like acoustic and has like a lot of like room reverb on it, has like a slight cymbal on it. So it just adds like some realism. So I'm just going to drag that in there, and I'm going to roll off, I'm going to use a low pass filter here and roll off a bunch of the lows. I'm going to pull the gain on this down. So I have both of these sounds loaded in. But I'm going to go into, they each have their own envelope, so I'm just going to kind of boost these. I'm going to reduce the length of this as well. I usually like going around like 400-ish. And then I'm just going to kind of tighten this up. And then I'll do the same thing here. I'm just going to try and like match their tails as close as I can. Let's bring that like here. And this has like this cool view so you can see any like phase here. I believe I can zoom in as well and kind of like look to see if it's in phase or not. In this instance, it's not really going to be an issue if they're out of phase with each other a whole lot because one's operating in such a different space than the other. So now our kick sounds like this. So something like this sounds kind of nice. I originally had this pulled out, but a lot of times when you do this, it can sound like it's like very identifiable that there's like two different kicks. So a lot of times I don't really care to do that, but I really wanted to accent this tail a little bit. So now I'm going to just pull this gain down. All right, so let's mix this kick real quick. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to load in Pro Q4. You can use any EQ for this. This is just my default one. But let's actually solo this kick with our respace. And I'm going to load an instance of Pro Q4 on here. I'm going to set the loop here as well so that we can have our kick going. This one's our kick track. And this is like the main bulk of where our kick is hitting is like right around here at like 100. And if we look at our sub, our respace, a bulk of it is happening, like the fundamental boost in the low end is happening here. So I'm probably going to want to reduce this section here and boost this section here on the sub when we get there. For now, I'm not going to do anything with the bass. But keeping that in mind, up to around like probably like 65 or 70 hertz, I probably want to cut out of the kick to give the bass that section. So I'm just gonna roll this off. I'm gonna pull it back a tiny bit. We'll go like here. And then we can maybe add like a little bit of a cut here, nothing too insane. Maybe use a little bit of dynamic EQ here as well. And then we can give it a boost here at like around 100, maybe like around 105. Something I am hearing with this kick is I'm hearing a lot of this section here is like muddying up the mix for me a little bit. But again, like I was talking about earlier, listen if I cut this with the bass going, it just sounds so weak now. So I'm gonna do an A and B test here. So I'm gonna click copy and I'm gonna go B. And then for B, we'll set that to 0 and I'm gonna use dynamic EQ instead. And if we go to A, we'll do an A and B test here. And you'll hear how this one still sounds clear, but it retains a ton of the mid information still. Like this one still has that like heavy thump and it still hits even though I'm reducing this like honestly a little more aggressive than I probably need to. That's why I love dynamic EQ. That free EQ Nova has that as well. There is this little like click here that I kind of like too. So I'm gonna give that like a tiny boost just to accent it a little. And now I kind of want to unsolo this, the bass and the kick together just to hear everything else with it. Now I'm unsure if I want to do a low pass filter here on the top end of the kick. I might do a little bit just thinking about like all the other elements that are going to be in there. This is probably unnecessary for the kick. Be careful doing this though, because you can get rid of a lot of like good information with your kick by doing this. But like I think doing a soft cut like that is fine. I like that tone there at like 5K too, so I'm going to give that a little boost. Actually, I don't think I'm going to have the filter on there. I feel like that's a little aggressive for right now. So I'm gonna actually shelf this like this. And I'm just doing a subtle boost here. It just sounds kind of nice. So I think that's okay for now. We can always revisit this later. So now I'm gonna load in Pro C2. And I have some default settings in here. On my site, I'm gonna have these available if you have Pro C2. I'll upload all these for you if you want to download them. This is set to as close to an 1176 as I could at its fastest setting and fastest release. I'm probably gonna pull the release back a little bit, something like that. I think that's actually fine. I'll pull the makeup gain down a little bit. Probably compress it a tiny bit more. So I think that should be good. Now, something I like to do when I'm compressing is I like to do multiple stages. So I have this first one that's like more surgical and it's like removing or kind of controlling the transients in the dynamic range. I actually really like using this as a second compressor to just add a like very gentle saturation. So I'm gonna have a very fast release. I'll put this at like 20 milliseconds. So it's like a slow attack time because I'm really just adding this to give like a nice tone. And I'm just looking for like 2 dB of reduction here, if that. Can add on this like soft distortion type. I'm trying to match up these together. I'm gonna look at this meter instead because it's a little easier to see than like trying to look at these. I do hate how they have these so far apart. It's like impossible to see. So 10.5. Okay, so I can add like 2 dB. Okay, so that should be, that should be fine. So you'll see this a lot too. Like I do this a ton where I do my first compressor to control my transients in dynamic range, and then I might add a second one just to give it like a nice tone or something. This one just makes the kick feel a little bit less digital and a little more real. The last thing I'm gonna use K-Clip 3. If you don't have this, you can use Free Clip 2 is really good, and you can get the same result. So I am going to, what a clipper does, by the way, is a clipper is a form of compression that rather than reduce the transients, it cuts the transients off if they go over the threshold. This is like one of the main secrets to loudness. This is how you can achieve really loud mixes, is through multiple stages of compression, clipping, and limiting. I'll show you how this works. So we have these wave files here. I'm gonna pull this threshold down, and I'm looking at this this little meter here. I'm actually gonna soften this too, just so it's not cutting as aggressive. We'll go like 20%. And so now we're actually clipping. I'm actually gonna solo the kick for this so I can hear the clipping. I'm gonna go aggressive and you'll hear it. Hear how it's like all square and like shitty there? I don't want that. So I'm gonna pull it back. Let me bypass this. I can still hear a little bit. It's a little too aggressive still. So that sounds okay. So now what I'm gonna do is I've clipped 3.7 dB. So now I have somewhere close to that headroom. It's not always exact, but now I can boost by that much. I'm just gonna A and B this to make sure. So 10, 4. So let me show you the difference between before clipping and after clipping, and how insane this is for getting things to be very loud. So before clipping, our kick sounded like this. And then after clipping, it sounded like this. And you'll notice the volume is the exact same, like the decibel output. It's just such an aggressive form of compression that it brings those quiet parts up way louder. So you're able to get like a ton more body into your kicks, and you're able to get a ton of more volume in whatever you're clipping in general. That being said, you should be very careful when you're using, this is referred to as soft clipping, but you want to be careful when you're using clipping because it's very easy to overdo. That's why a lot of the times I'll pull this down till I hear that like gross distortion, and then I'm kind of meticulous going back and like pulling it back until it's like at a range that sounds okay. There are arguments about whether or not this is like a good thing to be doing in general. When you reduce the dynamic range of your sound this significantly, you do lose tons of dynamics just inherently by doing that, which can result in less impactful builds and also drops as a result of that. So it's honestly, it's kind of discretionary. For EDM as a whole and as a genre, generally people mix their tracks to be really loud. That's just kind of how it is. I try and make mine as close to industry standard as I can and I'm comfortable with. Sometimes I'll have tracks that are a little bit quieter. It just kind of like depends on if it fits the track or not. But in general, I think clipping is incredibly useful, especially if you're trying to achieve loudness, which if you're making EDM, that's probably what you want. So we have this kick now. This is before processing. Still sounds kind of nice. And then after processing, like that's crazy. And it's still the same dB. And now let's A and B this with everything else. So before processing and after. And we can make this stand out a little bit more. So it's instrument 9. So we're going to go to this bass, and we are going to add on a compressor, and we are going to set the ratio. We'll do like 5:1, fast release, fast attack, very hard knee. And then I'm going to go to sidechain, select instrument 9 because I know that's our new kick. Turn these off. Okay, so let's unsolo this. I feel like generally I like hitting around like somewhere between 3 and 5 dB of compression for sidechaining. If I'm just trying to do it like subtle. If you're going for a pump effect, you're probably going to want to go for like 10. Like something like that, and just have a very fast attack and release time. But for this, I don't really care to have like a pump. I just want that kick to like pop a tiny bit more. And remember, we also did like we've mixed this kick considering this bass, and because of that, that's going to translate to when we have like sub bass. And now going forward, we can mix all of our like basses and synths kind of around this fundamental sound. So now that we have the kick mixed, what I want to do is I kind of want to clean this up and do some organization real quick because it's starting to get like a little bit messy. And I want to talk about routing and submixes. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click and hold this and drag it here. And then if I double click here, I can rename this. So I'm going to rename this Kick 2. And then if you hover over these icons, you can hold Control and click, and it'll give you like an icon list. So I'm going to change my kick to a kick drum, so it's just easier to find. And you'll notice when we made this drum machine, I can collapse this and I can move stuff around in it. And if I look at this routing section, this one says stereo out, this one says bus 4. What that means is that this kick drum is getting sent to bus 4. Now, because this is a drum machine designer in Logic, it won't tell you a bus number, it just says drum machine designer. But if I go into routing and go to bus, it'll show bus 4 right here. But generally, these will indicate what bus number they are. So this kick drum is getting routed into this drum machine designer, and then it is going to my stereo output. So the reason submixes are super useful is, let's pretend that we wanted to apply a filter to every single drum in this entire submix. We would have to manually go through and add a filter to each one of these and automate them the same if we were doing automation. But with the submix, you can just go into the main channel and you can just apply a filter on that. And now when I hit the drums, it applies that to all of the drums rather than just having to do that multiple times. So it's much faster to do it this way, and it saves a ton of CPU. You can also turn the gain of everything down together. You can turn it back up together. So it's just a way to keep everything consistent. You can apply processing to all of them together, how we were talking earlier about bus compressors. This is an instance where you would use a bus compressor to apply a consistent gluing sound to all of them to make them sound consistent. And finally, it's just really good for organization. Like having all of these all over the place, like how our basses are right now, it's just kind of confusing and hard to navigate. So having them organized into a little folder is a lot better workflow for me. So I'm going to rename this to drums. And then I'm going to change this icon here to this guy. And one more thing I'm going to do, I'm going to name Kick 2, I'm going to add DR in front of it. I always use a header in front of my individual tracks just so it's easier when I'm searching through menus. It'll show up as like all the drums will be DR or something. So it's just like easier for organization later on. So I'm going to collapse that folder real quick. And then let's organize these basses as well. So I'm going to drag, I know that's that like respace. This is the drop bass 1 and drop bass 2. So I'm going to shift click and then hold shift command and press D. You'll get this option to create a track stack, which is just making a submix. I'm going to select summing stack and hit OK. And then I'm going to name this bass mix. And this is the icon I like using for my basses. I'm going to use that. And then I'm going to denote this with the prefix bass, and then I'll call this verse res. We'll do bass drop lead, and then bass drop lead 2. Another thing I like to do is to color code how everything looks. You can do what works best for you. You don't have to color code if you don't want to. I just like to because it's just like aesthetically everything in all of my projects is always the same so that it's just fast. I can open an old session and know exactly what I was doing. So I would just go pink for drums. You'll notice too right here, it's not selecting everything because I have this loop on. So I'm going to turn that off. And then I can just click here. And then bass, I usually do this blue. I'm going to do Option Command D again. And even though there's only one track, I'm still going to make it a submix because I'm going to add stuff to this later. So I'm going to name this one, we'll name this Synth Mix. And this is the icon I like to use for this. And then we'll name this Synth Pluck. And then we'll make it that color. I'll make one more submix for now. So effects, I like using this for the effects one. All right, so now it's nice and organized and we have this like very clean, organized workflow. That's a lot easier to navigate. One thing I want to address too is I used to get very confused when I first started using submixes because I was like, well, what goes in a submix? When should you use them? Because I was like, okay, all the drums have to be with drums and all the bass has to only be with bass, but sometimes it gets kind of confusing. Just do what makes sense for you and keep it organized in a way that is easier. We'll be using buses and routing a lot more. So again, this is one of those things that it's like very confusing when you first learn about it, but you're going to be exposed to this a ton. So don't get too overwhelmed with it. Just kind of like take the information in, process it, and then just like let it go. And within the next couple of videos, it'll start making a lot more sense. That's going to wrap up this one. In the next one, we are actually going to start doing a good amount of sound design and building our own sounds and mixing them. It's going to be really fun. So like, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one. Tell me how you want it.